What's going on, everybody? This is live stream 52, and the topic of the hour is a kind of a loaded one. So we're going to discuss what we think is the best rifle and optic for both a infantryman in a military and a armed prepared citizen in, like, let's say a militia setting, right? Because there's going to be a lot of parallels there, but there's also going to be a lot of differences because of laws and stuff like that. So we're going to kick that around, and how I'm going to do this is I'm going to specify a billet. So, for instance, a rifleman, all right? You're one of the billets in a rifle squad, and we'll go around a horn, and everybody will be able to give their 2 cents of what they think. You know, hey, what's the best rifle and optic for, somebody in a military? If I had to make my picture-perfect rifle squad, how would this look, both in a military setting and a civilian armed prepared citizen setting? So, with that being said, I'm going to go around the horn and introduce everybody, and then we'll kick this off. So, first and foremost, we got Les with Pegasus Tests. That's his YouTube channel. Be sure to check him out. He's a logistics expert. He's got his own logistics company. You guys see it there, Polaris Worldwide. Les was also a United States Marine, served in Desert Storm. He's got his own tactical training company called Polaris Tactics and Simulations Division. Be sure to check out his YouTube channel, Pegasus Test. Les, thanks for jumping on with us tonight.
Glad to be here, Brent.
All right, next we got the good Bruce, a.k.a. Boomer Jr. Bruce is my right-hand man here on YouTube. You're hard-pressed to find videos without him. He's got his own YouTube channel called Bruce at Camp Armament. That's also his Instagram page. Be sure to check him out. Bruce was an aircraft mechanic. He's also an armorer. He does a lot of excellent Cerakote work. He just completed some excellent stuff. Can't really share it right now, but take my word for it. It's good stuff. But Bruce also brings that civilian perspective to the chat, and it's always badly needed. So, Bruce, thanks for jumping on tonight.
It's always a pleasure, Brent.
All right, next we got Jared with 2 Alpha Solutions. That is his YouTube channel. He also has a horseshoeing channel. What's it called?
World Famous Farrier. And both of my channels are on the news side, so there's not much on either one.
All right, well, he's up and coming, guys, so make sure you go over to his channel and give him a like and a subscribe. But Jared was my competition in the Grunt Proof Sear Challenge, which is going on right now. They just had episode 4 air. So, yeah, Jared was a Navy veteran, served down in South America, undisclosed locations. And he also has his own tactical training company, which he helps instruct there. So, Jared, thanks for jumping on tonight. Appreciate you having me on here, bud. Absolutely. All right, last but not least, we got Mike with Small Team Supply. You guys might know him. He's the creator of the AR RPK Upper by Klein Machining. He's got his own YouTube channel called Small Team Supply. Be sure to check him out, guys. He has his own little dungeon down there where he's constantly hammering out questionable items. He's the only one I know that shows up at places like One Shepherd and S&S Training Solutions with rifles that no one's ever seen before.
Yeah, I like to do a lot of product testing, real world testing out in the field with it.
Awesome. So, but just like Bruce, Mike brings that excellent civilian perspective, but he's also a lead black hat instructor at the One Shepherd Leadership Institute, and coincidentally, he's the one that got me involved in it. So, Mike, thanks for jumping on tonight, brother.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, guys. So that is our panel. So once again, I'm going to kind of introduce this. You're going to pick your ideal rifle and optic and why, and you have to pick it for both a professional military. All right. If you want to use U.S. military, that's fine, but it can be any professional military. And you got to pick one for civilian militia. Let's say U.S. civilian militia. All right. So you're going off of our respective firearm laws and everything else. Okay. So, and just for simplicity, let's just go U.S. military. How about that? All right. Everybody understand the rules? Okay. Make sure you explain your reasoning. Okay. But I'm not limiting calibers or rifles. If you want to say, hey, I want my rifleman with a flamethrower with a fucking low power variable optic attached, by all means, but you need to explain why. All right, here we go. Les, you are the first runner up, brother. Go for it. Rifleman.
All right. Cool. I love tradition. All right. So let's start with the military side. Rifleman gets a rifle. So my preference, M16A4. I want to have an optic on it that's going to be an EOTech EXPS3. And the reason I want this combination is Rifleman needs to be doing things with his rifle. It's in the name, so he's going to be taking mostly closer in shots. So the red dot's going to work for him. And that EOTech reticle is just phenomenal. And the other thing is, it is one of the better, if not the best, reticles for passive night vision aiming. And if you're in the military, especially the modern US military, you're probably going to have nods. So the ability to integrate and use those with your red dot optic is going to be paramount. So yes, for the US military rifleman, M16A4, EOTech XPS3, and prepared to use it with night vision. Now, for the armed prepared citizen who has all the options in the world for him, I'm going to have a slightly different take on that. My preferred rifle would be the What Would Stoner Do carbine, mainly because it's so lightweight, it's highly accurate, it's an awesome, phenomenal rifle, and in my collection, it's my favorite rifle, so that's the one I'm going to go with. 16-inch barrel, fixed stock in an A1 length, Picatinny rail, carbon fiber handguards. I can put whatever I want on it. It's going to be easy to mount my pack. And for my optic, I'm going to go with a hollow sun. And the reason I'm going for the hollow sun is lightweight, get the EOTech style reticle. I got a solar panel backup that gives me the same capability as the ACOG fiber optic does. And it's only the size of an Aimpoint T2. And it's the price, worst case, is half the price of any of the things I've just mentioned. In some cases, a third of the price. It's very easy to add a magnifier on there, which I would do. And yet I still have the ability, depending on the exact model that I get, I believe it's 503C is the one that's also got some night vision compatible settings. So for just a standalone rifleman, those are my two picks.
All right, so Les, nothing wrong with that. You guys are going to find that I kind of probably I don't feel that strongly about this topic in a lot of ways, but just to play along for me, let's just knock the rifle out first, and we'll talk about the optic and why. So on the rifle, I want a 5.56 rifle. Some of that will sit sour with you guys. Oh well, I want easily available ammunition anywhere and everywhere within the states. I want a weapon that uses Stenang or USGI military M16 magazines for the exact same reason. They're reliable in my experience, and they're easily available. I can always get them. In terms of the rifle, I had this discussion with a friend of mine just the other day. Sometimes I get these calls and the guy's like, "Hey, what rifle do you have?" Because he's wanting to copy me because, I'm the authority according to some people. And it's like, well, I started thinking about this. I said, well, man, I really love like the Scar 16. You guys know this, but that's a pricey gun. And then I said, well, what about the Beretta ARX 160? I love that gun too. It's also pricey, and it's just hard to get and probably impossible to get parts for. And then I said, you know what? Just buy a good M4. And I've settled on that. And M4 is a great platform, whether it's M4, M16, whatever numbers you put around it. That same platform is absolutely fantastic. It's going to be easy to maintain. It's going to be easy to learn. And it's going to be the easiest firearm probably in the United States to get parts for. So let's go with that. We've got an M4 in whatever configuration that you want. And we're going to throw an optic on it. Now, what's the optic? Well, there was a comment here earlier by, I'm already calling out you guys on your comment, CB194, where basically, there it is. He says, the dot is clear even for me with astigmatism. Okay, that may be true for you, but I have astigmatism and it's not for me. I was running an Aimpoint T1 on a Scar 16, shooting out to 700 yards at a Tiger Valley training class probably 10 years ago. And I realized when they're starting to talk about find the center of that dot and know your holdovers at those ranges, with my astigmatism, there was no center of the dot. And that was the moment that I realized that a $600 top quality optic was not what I needed. Something also, I don't like the fact that something like that needs batteries, because as long as I'm at home in peacetime, I've got access to batteries. But somewhere down the road, if I'm in a one shepherd winter type training scenario where we're in and out of the snow, in and out of the heat and the cold, that stuff just kills batteries. And I realized that being battery dependent isn't something that I was going to do. So what optic am I going to go with? It's not going to be dependent on batteries, number one, and it's going to be astigmatism friendly, number two. So it's going to be an etched reticle, and it's going to be something like ACOG or something like a primary arms optic that has an etched reticle. We're going to get into the powers and the types of that later on, but just something just to be flat out simple, something you all will understand. An aim point, a primary arms 2X, 3X, or an ACOG. Any of those absolutely fit what I need to go on top of my M4 in 5.56 in the terrain that I live in, and will make me happy and cover all my bases.
I'm sorry, did you cover military too?
No difference. Sorry, guys. No difference. For me, it's the same rifle for the same job. The only difference is that for big military, if I was in the U.S. military, I can absolutely expect a supply of things like batteries. That still does not change my overall opinion. Something like a primary arms etched reticle, those take batteries. They use batteries for the illumination side at night. So I could still use batteries, but I don't have to have batteries. If I don't have batteries, I can still operate that optic fine in lighted conditions. So it will still work. So in that respect, no difference. I really, you guys will find this, but I really mesh the lines between militia civilian fighting and military fighting. I'm not confident that I always have the supply that Uncle Sam would promise me that I would have, and I'd rather not be dependent on him. My government has let me down one too many times in my life.
All right. So I don't have a lot of experience with optics and everything. Most of everything I've ever had was just iron sights in my military career. What I do have on my personal rifles is an EOTech with a 3x magnifier, and I absolutely love them. They do take batteries. It's the little button cell batteries, I believe, if I remember right. And I have astigmatism, and none of those seem to affect my aiming or anything, my vision. So I have no issues with those. When I go to build my next one, I'm thinking about putting an ACOG on it. I'm not sure which way I want to go with that. And as far as the military goes, I think the ACOG is probably the way to go, because it's just an overall, I believe, an overall good reticle for just the everyday soldier. It would be on any of them would be on a 5.56 platform.
Okay, so for military purposes, I would have a modified M16A1. I want that lightweight barrel, and I want the handiness. I actually want the plastic two-piece handguards, because the problem with a lot of these free float rails is your hands get extremely cold, even with gloves on in the wintertime. And that plastic is a nice insulated barrier. It also allows you to strip the rifle down and actually clean it and service it a little bit more fully than a standard free float rail. I would make some slight changes. I would go with a 1-9 twist for logistics purposes, and I would have a flat top upper receiver. On that flat top upper receiver, I would have a like an aim point red dot sight, and I would have a Knight's Armament backup iron sight, and then the fixed front sight post would just be the old standard, bayonet lug front sight post, and then I would have the full auto switch on there, but I would train the guys on how to use it. And I would also make sure it's outfitted with a GI loop sling and train guys to use the GI loop sling, not just in semi-automatic fire, but also in fully automatic fire, so that you have a more stable firing platform to squeeze the most out of that rifle. For the civilian side of the house, I don't care what AR-15 configuration you have, as long as you have an AR-15 and that's solely for logistic purposes. The reason why I don't so much care is because I think the country is essentially awash in these rifles, and you can actually be a little creative in being able to select the proper rifle for your terrain and your mission. So I think you have a lot more flexibility on the civilian side of the house as far as being able to select the item for the job. While on the military side, you're kind of more stuck with you can be deployed anywhere in the world, and that rifle has to work anywhere in the world. So again, that's why I'm really demanding iron sights at a minimum on that rifle. And the other thing is, with that flip up rear sight, that is not a backup iron sight. In that it's not for backup purposes. It is for engagement at distances outside of 100 meters. So at your 200, 300, 400, 500 meters, I expect you to be running that iron sight. Now, the issue with this rifle is target identification may be a problem. However, I would expect someone on the team to have some kind of magnified optic or some kind of binoculars, something that nature, to be able to get positive ID on the enemy. Same thing with the civilian side of the house as well. But as far as everyday infantry soldier, that's the rifle I would equip them with.
My turn. Okay. So I'm gonna start with military, and again, this is specifically talking about the rifleman, your basic infantry rifleman. All right, we will hit the other billets later. So starting with military, professional military, I would take a 5.56 rifle. I'm not jumping on board with the new calibers and stuff like that. I think 5.56 is just fine, and we're seeing the effects of 5.56 in Ukraine performing pretty severely on the enemy. All right, there. So I think 5.56 is still slaying bodies, and I think it's just a good overall general purpose caliber, particularly for your average everyday infantryman. Okay, so I take an AR. All right. Not your standard M4, though. I would go from that 14.5 inch barrel to that 16 inch barrel. So similar to the M27 IAR. I think a 16 inch is the happy medium between the 14.5 and 20. And, going out to the Nevada deserts with Bruce and shooting with Dimitri with primary arms out there, he and I both were running 16 inch barrels the multiple times we've been there and reaching out and touching targets. 500 meters, no problem. 600, pretty good, right? And then once you start getting past that, then it's you're still hitting in the area, right? Almost becomes an area weapon there, but you're still capable. I was shooting at a target at 800 freaking yards out there, and out of the 10 shots I fired, I think 3 or 4 hit a steel size silhouette target, but the rest were very close. Okay, you could hear it and see it on the camera. So it's 16 inches in my mind is a good barrel length for an individual infantryman, rifleman. Okay. Optic, I would go with I've been in the Marine Corps 21 years. I've seen us go from iron sights all the way to what we're at now. All right. With, these new Trijicon low power variable optics. I personally think ACOGs, fixed 4-power ACOGs, with an RMR on top is the way to go for the standard rifleman. That fixed 4-power was perfect, in my opinion, for me engaging targets all the way out to 800. With that, when I was shooting at that 800 yard, I could still see that target. I still using the BDC on the reticle, I was still hitting, like I was talking about, and it was a great optic for that range. Anything beyond that is not really within the capabilities of my weapon. And as a regular rifleman, I don't think that rifleman needs anything more than that. So fixed 4, but I do want that RMR on top. Why? Because the more I train shooting passively, the more I think, hey, that is absolutely the way to go, and the way we need to start steering our guys to in the future. Okay. IR lasers do have their purpose. They are good for CQB, but we're on a battlefield now where both sides essentially are running nods and, lighting up the battle space with IR lasers, letting everybody know where you're at is not a good thing to do. Okay. So training with that RMR on top of my ACOG, shooting passively. And by the way, you can shoot passively with your ACOG as well. But shooting passively with that RMR is freaking simple, guys. It's great, and it's great for CQB as well. So military, that's what I'm going with. I want a modified M4 with a 16-inch barrel, full auto capabilities. Okay, none of this burst stuff. And and I would say I like quad rails, guys. I've always been a fan of that. So I'm sticking with a quad rail and preferably some like 45-degree offsite backup irons. So that would be my option for military. Now, civilian, armed prepared citizen. I'm going to go, I'm going to take kind of a cookie cutter approach, even though we know civilians have a vast array, right? So if I was like, let's say, armed prepared citizen commander of a group of individuals, my standard would be an M4, platform, your standard 16-inch legal barrel. So your typical M4 style AR-15. And then I would say, just like Bruce, take the same approach. It needs to be an etched. I think Primary Arms has a 3X. So like the etched reticle with BDC, fixed 3 power, or you can use, like an ACOG. All right. Something along those lines, but I would go for an ACSS reticle variant. And then if you have the capability, mounting some type of RMR. If you have the ACOG, you mount the RMR on top. If you have the primary arms, maybe get some of that offset, 45-degree offset, red dot, something along those lines so that you can start passively engaging, because we're seeing MVGs becoming cheaper and cheaper. So I think, eventually more and more civilians are going to be equipped with this stuff. So that's what I would go. Standard M4 style AR-15 platform with primary arms, 3X ACSS on the cheap side. All right. If you got some money, expendable income, then you start upgrading, but you have to have an AR-15 platform and, ACOG. That would be my armed prepared citizen rifleman role. So, all right, transitioning to, let's go automatic rifleman. All right. So this is going to be your automatic rifleman billet. What is going to be your military and civilian equivalent? Kicking it back over to Les.
All right. Well, I'm going to go old school, and a lot of people are going to disagree with me here because they're not going to consider it an automatic rifle, but I am a fan of the saw. So automatic rifleman gets a saw, and he gets some type of ACOG to go on top of it. That's just the answer in my book. Now for the civilian, that gets different. I'm going to take the view that the civilian we're talking about in question has no access to Class 3 firearms. So I'm going to suggest that we go with Mr. Klein's AR RPK setup. It's a great setup when combined with either a very high quality trigger or a binary trigger. You can put out a decent volume of fire. It's completely AR compatible, so therefore magazines and extended capacity magazines such as the Surefire Mag or the D60 drum, or if you've lost your mind, you can go with a Beta Mag. But you have the ability to put higher quantities of ammunition into it, yet still run it off 30-round mags if you need to. It's in the same caliber as the Rifleman. So that's what I would use as a base of fire weapon as an armed prepared citizen.
All right, so I'm going to go back to the comments section. I see Casey says Fight Light MCR FRT. Those just are not reliable, Casey. I've got one. The design, the idea, the theory is absolutely beautiful. You basically have a saw light with that's belt fed, that's on an AR lower that can also be full auto. And there's a lot to be said that I really like that, but they're simply not reliable enough. They haven't refined that to the point that they're reliable enough to be a combat, in my opinion, a combat effective weapon. If they were to work that out, they would really have something special there. I'm inclined to say RPK. And this is both sides, military or civilian side. Maybe more so on the civilian side, because on the civilian side, you're probably you're relying less on replacement parts and things of that nature. Got an RPK 7.4 that's, oh my God, guys, it's phenomenal. It's an absolute pleasure to shoot. We don't take it out because we'll burn through too much ammo. It runs like a sewing machine. And having 45 round mags in that, it just goes and goes and goes. It is such a smooth shooter. And it's lightweight to carry. And that's really important too. I don't want an M60. That's, to me, that's too heavy to carry around, or an M240 that's too heavy to carry around. Yes, it brings a lot of ass with it, but I think that for a rifleman, we're not talking about machine gunner, but automatic rifleman standpoint, they got it right with the RPK back in the 60s. That is the perfect weapon, where they essentially took their battle rifle, the AK, they added a little capacity to it, added a fire sustainability barrel and a bipod with it, and went with it. Now, that being said, looking at Klein's offering of the AR RPK, that looks really good too. I don't have a lot of time on it. I've handled a couple, but you basically have the reliability of the AR magazine fed system. It sort of reminds us of the Canadians adopted this way back in the day, where they went to Colt and they said, Colt, we want to use an M16 lower. We want to put a super heavy barrel on it with a bipod. We want to have a carry handle for it. And we're going to use that as an automatic rifleman type weapon. And to me, I think that's just perfect. It's only a little bit heavier than a regular M16, but you get a longer barrel, so more velocity, a heavy barrel, so it'll dissipate the heat better. And you've got the ability just to snap an M16 lower on it and freaking go. That's a fantastic idea. And Klein is essentially offering a modernized version of that, where if you want, you can get a railed handguard for it too, whether you want to put a quad rail on it or whatever. I want to go back real quick and clarify or add a couple of things that Klein reminded me of. I'm his best friend tonight, it seems like, because he's reminded me of things I forgot to say. On my rifles, I want a lightweight barrel. When I mentioned Scar 16 and I mentioned Beretta ARX 160, those two have one thing in common: Cold Hammer Forged chrome line lightweight pencil barrel. I don't like carrying a lot of weight around, because I know that I'm going to spend most of my time carrying a rifle and not a lot of time shooting it. So being able to carry a lightweight rifle without excess pounds added to the barrel or ounces, that's important to me. And a second thing for you guys to look at, if you're just thinking about taking this information and building a rifle, the AAC square drop handguard, which is no longer made because sometimes great things are invented and don't take off. That handguard is user serviceable in the field. You can take that off. And what Klein mentioned was he likes being able to remove his handguards and service the weapon. Yes, the AAC square drop will allow you to do that. If you've got a quad rail on there that you can't take off in the field, and you've got, say, a gas block under that quad rail, and you need to service that gas block, guys, you may be out of luck. This is particularly important if you're running set screws on your gas block. Something common to see fail. If you're running taper pins in that gas block like the military does, okay, you're probably going to be fine. But I'll recap real quickly and bring us back on track to the squad automatic rifleman. Something like an RPK. And I'm thinking I want an optic on that, something like I want on my rifle as well. No reason for that to be any different. So I'm looking at a 2X to a 4X magnified optic, not battery, something that doesn't need batteries, not dependent on batteries, and ideally something that could maybe work through, solar like an ACOG. That's my 2 cents on that.
So for the military side of it, I would go with the saw with an ACOG, something just simple and basic. Again, the automatic weapons and the optics aren't my forte. And for the civilian side, anything 308 caliber, any of those larger calibers like that with some kind of an ACOG on it. The civilian side, they're not going to be as well versed in it. And you're going to want something lighter because a lot of these people, the civilians out there, and I'm not counting everybody, obviously, they're just not physically fit to carry these heavier weapons platforms.
So I don't I don't think this sound like a shell, but man, I 100% my upper I fits the billet. The problem with a lot of what the U.S. Army has been doing for a long time now with their belt-fed weapons is they tried to take a crew serve weapon, make it a lighter caliber, and still have it where it only really you can only really squeeze the potential out of it if you have assistant gunner and you have ammo bearer. You know what I mean? You actually have a crew associated with that. The issue with that in a by fire roll, if it's crewed appropriately, but the nice thing with automatic rifles is they're not, and generally that's what you do until you can bring up your attached weapons group to actually lay down a base of fire. But then what does the automatic rifle do? Well, it goes on the assault, and then you can either break it up as a separate maneuver element. So you have your assault and you have your assault by fire, or you can attach them and then you bound onto the objective. So that's where it really shines, is being able to pick the rifle up and go on the assault with it. So as far as how I would lay it out, it's for a long time, I've been very content with a red dot setup as the primary optic. Now, Brent clued me in to run an ACOG, and I've been really, really happy with that 3.5x ACOG on there. So either way, I can see the advantages of them. I like the red dot because it's easy for me to operate that with the night vision. If I was able to get one of those ACOGs that have the batteries where I can dim it down, because the issue with the old-fashioned ACOGs is that tritium element is a problem for my night vision. It's just too bright for me. So that's the only case that I kind of disagree with ACOG, unless I can actually dim that brightness down. Now, Brent, he's probably going to say, hey, throw that, extra red dot on there. And okay, that I think that's a viable solution as well. But as far as how you'd set this up for military civilian, I would say identical. I think, it's going to be mission dependent and your equipment dependent. So again, on the civilian side, I think you get a little more flexibility to choose your specific setup for your terrain and your mission. But red dot or an ACOG, it's going to be hard to beat on that weapon system.
Okay, automatic rifleman. So I'm torn, guys. I'm really torn. I really do agree with Les. The saw. I know the saw has gotten some hate over the years, and the Marine Corps no longer uses it. They completely replaced it with the M27 IAR, but now we're at a point where all infantrymen, the M27 IAR is the standard infantry service rifle. So it's like, what's the difference between an automatic rifleman and standard rifleman in the Marine Corps infantry? And really, it's target precedence and maybe the difference of an optic, but it's the same damn weapon. So I'm not quite sure we got that right on the Marine Corps side of the house. I have seen a saw in combat, and it's a pretty impressive weapon system. Now, is it an automatic rifle? Absolutely not. It's a light machine gun. It was a light machine gun put in the automatic rifleman role, right? What filled those roles before that? Well, you had an M60 with an attached bipod. M16, sorry, attached bipod. Before that, you had an M14 with a fully automatic capability, right? Most of the riflemen's fully automatic capability was plugged off. And then before that, you had the BAR. So, we had this long precedence of an automatic rifle. So the SAW was kind of that first time we took a light machine gun and threw it in that role. And I don't know, I'm still kind of torn on this, guys. If I had to just make a snap decision right here on the spot, fuck it, I'd go for the SAW. I'd take that firepower back, guys. I've seen it in action. It's wonderful. And the combo that they had, they had an ACOG on there with an RMR on top during my third deployment in Afghanistan, and it was a sweet combination for an automatic rifleman. So civilian, absolutely 100% Klein Machining AR RPK. I will tell you that all day fucking long. And I read these comments about people whining about point of impact shift because of the bipod on the barrel and blah 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 blah. Guys, I've taken that sucker out there and I've fired full auto, not force reset triggers, not bump stocks, full auto with a registered class 3 fully automatic lower, and it was a freaking typewriter. And I'm telling you guys, there's video of it. Go to my channel and you will see that freaking impact on that dude's chest from just 100 meters away is beautiful. And it's a solid setup. So I would go Armed Prepared Citizen. I would go Klein AR RPK. And guess what? You can have a regular semi-automatic lower, okay? Because I assure you, when you're delivering those high volumes of long-range accurate fire and you're delivering that cone of fire on a target, whoever's on the receiving end of that, they're not sitting there saying, oh, man, it's not fully automatic fire. I'm going to go ahead and stick my head up. No, they're going to be getting suppressed with excellent suppressive fire, okay? And what optic I'd run on that? On the cheaper end, I think I'd stick with the same kind of setup for the rifleman. On the cheaper end, a primary arms 3X with ACSS. On the more expensive end, a fixed 4 ACOG with a RMR. So that's what I would roll for the civilian side of the house. Transitioning to, this is kind of an addition to your rifle squad, but a designated marksman. Let's talk about that one. That one might be pretty fun. So kicking it back over to Les.
All right, one addendum to my civilian automatic rifleman. I forgot to mention the optic, and the optic I use on my RPK Klein upper is the ACOG mini ACOG 1.5. That has just proven spectacular. I've used that in competition a couple times on my AR RPK in competition, and it has proven to be an excellent combination. Now, moving on to the DMR. For the military, I'm going to say something with an LPVO. If you want common logistics, they can go with a full-length M16 A4, like I have my rifleman using, or give him a 308 caliber rifle like a Scar Heavy or a M110 for that designated marksman role. On the civilian side, wow, your options here are absolutely limitless. And for what I use on the civilian side is I have an AR-10 style rifle in 308 just to reach out there a little bit farther and still pack a punch. I have a 1:6 variable power optic on it. Have it set up as a fixed stock rifle, not a collapsible stock. I think that makes a difference in my opinion. Have a good bipod on it. I believe on mine it's a Magpul bipod. I know some people don't like those, but I've had no trouble with them whatsoever. And they seem to stand up to the abuse that one shepherd can dish out to them. So that's very important. I get very good accuracy out of that rifle with match grade ammunition in it. It runs a nice 1.5 MOA, which is going to be good enough to get the job done.
Well, Les, I can't disagree with you hardly at all. I think that a DMR definitely has a place on the battlefield. way more so than a dedicated sniper rifle. So watching this video of this guy in Ukraine who had this badass, probably 20-pound sniper rifle. He's got a drag bag for it, and he's set up in a position, and they're being attacked by the Russians. And he comes back and he's like, this thing, I have no use for this thing. Give me an AK. This thing's worthless. And he was absolutely right. It was terrain dictates, right? And in his situation, he was in a low wooded area where he was expecting the enemy to come from. And he had his little rifle set up, and a BMP comes rolling through. They ain't going to do shit against a BMP. And he was in a regular, I would say, reasonably wooded area that was also suburban. There's just no place for a sniper rifle there. Sorry. Now, a DMR that can bridge the gap between a dedicated long range, ultra accurate rifle and a normal combat rifle that can almost be pressed into service in either role, that looks really good. Now, the Russians did this with the Dragunov, right? We all know the Dragunov. They had a etched reticle on the Dragunov, or have a etched reticle on the Dragunov. It has the capability of being illuminated. It uses a full-size rifle cartridge, 7.62 by 54R, and it's very capable of engaging out to medium ranges. Semi-automatic, so that if you need to fire multiple shots up close, you can do that. And really, and the optic has ranging capabilities that are easy to understand and easy to use, and this is important. You're not sitting there with infantry charging over a berm at you while you're trying to click away and get their range down. You just start sending rounds down range. So what would I choose? Les brought up several great suggestions. First of all, let me say, look, if you're watching this stream and you've got daddy's hand-me-down 30-30 with a fixed 6-power Simmons on it because he killed a lot of deer with it, you run what you brung. That's actually fine. That's a rifle that you can engage something with, whether it's a bolt gun or lever gun or whatever. You've got a medium to high power cartridge in that rifle. You've got an optic. Don't think that by any means we're talking down to you on any way. We're not. But ideally speaking, we're typically talking about we have a little money and we can afford to build our own rifles. Scar 17 is going to be pricey. You're going to probably look at $4,000 and then decide to put an optic on it. Okay. They're not cheap, but excellent platform. You're not going to get parts for that or support for that. You're probably not going to need it, but that will work great as a battle rifle. Think M14 or FAL, but it'll also work great with an optic on it as a medium range rifle with a medium range capable caliber that'll knock down pretty much so anything that you want to. So it's very diverse. Maybe an AR-10 is probably what I would recommend that you go with. Not nearly as expensive. I built one with optic for $3,000. Really nice Aero Precision AR-10. Uses mags, which will be probably available, the same as the M110. Put a low power variable optic on that from Aimpoint. The guy wanted a rifle that would do anything, so we went with a Trijicon AccuPoint. Doesn't matter, pick whatever you want. But the thing about the AccuPoint, etched reticle, doesn't need batteries. Okay, so that's starting to check some more of my boxes. You guys starting to see a theme here? Same idea. And that rifle will do absolutely anything you need to do. And you're going to have ammunition available because it's in 7.62 NATO. Doesn't really matter where you go in the world. Anywhere, any Western country is going to have 7.62 NATO of some form in stock. So yeah, that's going to be my recommendation. You hand me a decently built AR-10 with 20-round magazines and an etched reticle variable optic, I can do a whole lot with that rifle.
Yeah, I have to go with Bruce on this one. Any kind of AR-10 platform with, I would say, 1 to 8 reticle on it, non-powered. Excuse me. Or some kind of a Remington 700. Either one of those, I think it's going to be just fine. It's going to keep your costs down. If you have all the money in the world, you can go out and get all these other fancy things. But if you're trying to keep your costs down and you just want to go out and train, I think either one of those platforms is the way to go.
Is that both for military and civilian, or?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, any kind of 308 platform or AR-10 platform for the military as well.
For military, I would choose the M5 rifle. For a lot of reasons, I think suppressors are a good thing in that platform. I think that caliber is probably pretty good for that application as well. The magazine, I think the platform's just fine. As far as optic on it, I would go with a 3x9 with as big of a objective lens as you can get, 50, or maybe if you can go even bigger than 50. I would do that just for being able to passively aim through night vision, get as much light as you possibly can through that optic without diminishing your ability to see the target. And then for civilian side of the house, probably just a AR-10. The problem I have with AR-10 is it lacks standardization like the AR-15, but I still want that caliber selection. If M5 actually catches on and becomes a standard, then I would say M5 as well. But it really depends on if you are going to go all in and get that suppressor or not, I would say. But otherwise, I would say like a decent manufacturer, DPMS pattern style AR-10. And I'm going to throw a little curveball. I'm going to say 243 because it's 308 based. And if you need to kind of reload your own ammunition, I don't think that would be too difficult to do. And 243 is still pretty available. It's generally really available as a hunting round, so it's out there. And I think you get a little bit better performance as far as flatter shooting, better penetration, etc. So I'm going to say AR-10 platform in 243 and then have that same optic, that 3x9 with as big of a objective lens as you can get.
For military application, I'm going to go with I will break the caliber uniformity here and say that my designated marksman needs a bigger round, right? So I'm willing to entertain some of these newer improved rounds that are out there. I'm not really ready to like solidify on one. I would say I'm looking like 7.62 by 51, but you know, like I said, some of the newer round calibers, it needs to be bigger than 5.56 is what I'm getting at. But something like an AR-10 platform that's similar to the individual infantryman, because you got to remember, this is a designated marksman. This is not a sniper, right? He needs to be able to, if necessary, get in with that squad and close with the enemy. But at the same time, you need to be able to detach and say, hey, we need overwatch up on this hill while this squad closes with on the enemy. And by the way, here's your target precedence order. I need you to freaking be killing these dudes in this order. All right. So yeah, just a higher caliber round. I'm not willing to solidify that yet for military purposes. Optic, he needs to have, in my opinion, probably a low power variable optic, at minimum 1 to 8. I would say a 1 to 8 for a designated marksman. And it needs to be something like an ACSS, right? A bullet drop compensation. Because remember, he's not a freaking sniper. He's just a designated marksman. He's killing bodies. He doesn't need to put a round into a flea's ass at fucking 500 meters, right? He just needs to put a round into a flea at 500 meters. So, you know, something along these lines. Bigger rifle, bigger caliber, low power variable optic. If the regular riflemen are running ACOGs at fixed 4, he needs a low power variable optic, you know, 1 to 8 potentially. Civilian perspective. I'm going to say AR-10 style rifle, 7.62 by 51. Why? Because it's a plentiful round. There's a lot of it, and it's none of the Gucci calibers, right? We're not talking big military money. So 7.62 by 51 millimeter AR-10 platform, probably ideally, but something could supplement that, maybe like an M1A. Okay, civilians can reach out and get whatever the hell they want. But if I was a armed prepared citizen commander, militia commander, whatever you want to call it, I would say that, hey, my designated marksman needs to have a designated rifle in 7.62 by 51 millimeter, and he needs a low power variable optic like a primary arms 1-8 with an ACSS reticle. So that's what I'm going for there. Okay, I'm not going to do Grenadier because essentially that's going to be your rifleman with a freaking grenade launcher attached to it. Okay, so we're going to skip over that. Let's go team leader. All right, so what are you going to equip your team leader with, both military and armed prepared citizen? Les, you got the con.
All right. My team leader has other things to do because he has to lead his team. His team is his weapon. So his rifle is important, but not as important. So I'm going to say he gets a shorter version of the rifleman's rifle. So he gets something with a collapsible stock and a shorter barrel in the 14.5-inch thing for the military. So your basic M4. He gets the same optic setup that I talked about for the rifleman. So he gets an EOTech XPS3. So he can use his night vision for passive aiming. And I think that's going to be the best setup for the leader. Now switching over to the armed prepared citizen, I'm going to say he gets the same rifle the rifleman got, which in my case is the What Would Stoner Do rifle with a hollow sun optic that's night vision capable and a magnifier that he can take on and off the rifle just because it's going to help him identify targets. Beyond that, I don't see much difference between, in the civilian side, the rifleman and the team leader.
Well said, Les. For a team leader, something lightweight, air cooled, probably 5.56. I want to see magazine ammunition commonality among the squad. So something like an M4 XM177 is going to be ideal. Very lightweight, but yet almost the same capabilities as a rifleman would have. Typically, this team leader stuff, when you look at military manuals, ranger manuals and stuff, they break this stuff down. But in reality, when you start looking at squads out in the field that are combat hardened teams, that stuff just goes out the window, and the team lead ends up carrying what he's most comfortable carrying. And that would be where I would go is team lead. What do you want? Here's the M4 we've built for you. And if he goes, no, I want a full-size M16, well, he gets the full-size M16. If he goes, no, I want a 10.5-inch barreled XM177, okay, fine. If we've got it, you get that too. It's not that important. It's not a huge difference between the two. Terrain dictates, mission dictates is far more important than what some manual says. Now, moving on to the armed prepared citizen side, whatever he's most familiar with, I don't know what that even looks like. I mean, in my area, if I had to put a squad of guys together and they all showed up and they had rifles in the trunk of their car, I must, what do you, team lead, who's got the most military experience here? Oh, this guy's he did 2 tours in Afghanistan. He did 2 tours in Iraq, and he spent a year in Bosnia. Brother, you're the team leader, okay? Because you've got the most experience here. The most experience I've got is some civilian training, hanging out with this guy's in this stream, and turning wrenches on an airplane, which is Neil. So you're in charge. And whatever rifle he picks up, I'm not going to sit there and say, no, you're a team leader. You can't carry that. Brother, you carry what you're most familiar with. So whatever he goes to, you're not going to hear Pete from me. That's absolutely fine. But again, like I said before, if I have to choose for him, if he's standing there, which he won't be, and he says, okay, you pick for me what I'm going to carry that my life and this team's life is going to depend on, well, I'm going to go with something lightweight, air-cooled, like an M4, something he's got experience on. That would be ideal. But again, whatever he's comfortable with, his experience will dictate what that is if he's the team leader. In my opinion, he'll get to choose what that is.
All right. So for both civilian and military sides, I think whatever the rifleman, the common rifleman has, the team leader should have too. Maybe a little shorter. I don't think it really matters. But if the shit hits the fan, sometimes that team leader is going to have to fall into the role of the rifleman, even if it's just a temporary role. So to keep it even, and so I'm going to say that's for both military and civilian. Whatever the civilian shows up with is what he has. because that's going to be what he's trained on, what he's most proficient in.
Yeah, 100%. The team leader should be carrying the same weapon the rifleman carries, for the very simple fact that the team leader needs to be leading by example up there with men. So he needs the same capability as, his 2 or 3 other guys have. So, I mean, if this is a larger element, then okay, maybe we can, play Gucci a little bit, but, for just a, standard team leader, yeah, you need to be carrying the same equipment your boys are carrying. And I'd say, as far as the civilian side, yeah, same deal.
Right, my 2 cents on the so if my ideal infantry squad, my team leader Les and I seem to be on the same page most of the night. I'm going to go with the 14.5, the shorter barrel. And the reason I say that is because when I'm a team leader, right, my weapon are my guys, right? I'm focused mostly on fighting them. Right, I'm directing them. Hey, we're moving, we're set. We're fighting the team, we're bounding and stuff like that. I said my standard rifleman was going to have a 16-inch barrel. It's going to be a little bit longer, and although that would be fine for a team leader. I've been in those team leader roles, right? I've been a team leader, I've been a squad leader, I've been a freaking platoon sergeant. When you're doing those higher billets, like there's so much more you're doing. And if I have the capability of shrinking my weapon system down, right, shrinking my rifle, and it becomes more of just a self-defense item at that point because my weapon is my team. I'm having to focus on outward stuff as opposed to where my rifleman's concentrating on just doing his role. I would opt for a shorter carbine variant of that standard infantry rifle. So in this case, an M4 style weapon with the same optic. I don't want to give my team leader a 1 power optic or anything like that because I feel there's importance in having a magnified optic as a team leader because, hey, I don't have to sit here and break out binos. I can just glass something with my optic. And then when it comes time to fight, I'm fighting with my team. And my weapon at that point is more of a defensive tool. Although as a team leader, you are, hooking and jabbing. It's just you're not hooking and jabbing as much as the individual rifleman, right? You're more controlling your team. So, I would just opt for the same rifle, just in a smaller carbine fashion. So think the difference between an M16A4 and an M4 carbine with my ideal weapon there. So. Let's see. I think that's it, guys. We can open the floor and we can start kicking around stuff because we've gone through all this and we start taking questions from the audience. But I like the fact that there was a lot of differences between all of our stuff. But I want to go back to something Bruce said at the beginning. So Bruce, you said you weren't too thrilled about the topic, man. Can you elaborate on that? Go ahead.
That is not what I said. I said it was a great topic. So either you're freaking ribbing me or you misunderstood. But no, I think it's a fantastic topic. This is something everybody asks for, but it's kind of hard to accomplish anything, right? There's a few things I want to point out since you gave me the floor that we haven't covered here, but chat may be struggling with because it's on the tip of their tongue, but they haven't said it out loud. There's 2 things. One is, let's talk about ammunition for a minute, okay? When we're talking about accuracy on ammunition, there's a lot of discussion going on right now, 308 versus 7.62 NATO. There's a lot of discussion going on, 223 versus 5.56. What's more important, guys, the elephant in the room is batch numbers and lot numbers. And this is going to make your head explode because we're all on a budget and we buy ammo when we can. And we've got 3,000-4,000 rounds put up in the garage or in our gun closet or wherever. And I can almost guarantee you that it's not all from the same batch and lot because you bought it when you had the money to buy it. And those were different points of time. Now, Brent will tell you, and some of these other guys will back him up. If you're shooting for accuracy at range, we're talking about 500, 600 meters. It matters. It's the difference between a hit and a miss. And if you zero your rifle on one batch of, we'll just say green tip M855, okay? And then you start shooting a separate batch, whether that's a batch that you had in store or that's a batch that you got because you were out in the field and you're taking up ammunition from law enforcement or military or whatever you got, you're going to have to re-zero that because you're going to miss your targets. It's not going to be the same. Even though it's Lake City M855, it's not going to hit the same if it's from a different batch. We've learned that ourselves. It makes that much of a difference. It's several MOA, and several MOA matters at 500-600 yards. Same if you're going from 7.62 NATO to 308, it's going to be an even bigger difference, right? So batch numbers matter. And that's one of the probably most important things I wanted to say. The other thing is this: terrain dictates. Some of you guys are pointing out, like some of you guys are like, look, I needed 300 Win Mag. Some of you guys are like, a 12 gauge is fine for where I am. Not that either one of you are wrong, even though you're worlds apart. Depending on where you are, my go-to for home defense is 12 gauge shotgun. Why? Because the absolute longest range I have for 100 yards around where I live is probably 20 yards. That's the farthest shot I'm going to get. 12 gauge absolutely works for that. But if we're in Vegas, where we've got, and Brent and I have been there, where we're on one mountainside, we're armed with 5.56 or 308. We're literally looking at another squad on the other mountainside, and they're 3 miles away. We can do nothing more than wave to one another because we don't have anything that will reach that distance. Doesn't matter what optic we're running or what caliber we're running. So terrain dictates. And where you live, if you're in Georgia or the East Coast where it's relatively hilly and it's heavily wooded, and you're like, guys, I've got an AK in 7.62 by 39. That's absolutely fine. But an AK in 7.62 by 39 isn't going to do you any good at all if you're out in Nevada and you're shooting from one mountainside to the other. You need something completely different. Now, most of us are somewhere in between, and Brent and I are both in Texas. And what's interesting about Texas is so big, it's some of everything. You go to West Texas, it's freaking desert. You go to East Texas, it's what they call the piney woods. It's nothing but pine trees everywhere. We are right in the dead center middle of it, where we're stuck with tree lines and relatively heavily wooded tree lines and relatively open, long distance fields. So that's why guys like me and Brent go for things like 4X optics or 3S optics that give us the capability of shooting up close. You'll see Brent running an RMR on top a lot of times, or in this case, he's got a 1X with a magnifier. Okay, so it gives him huge capabilities, whether he's shooting up close inside of 100 yards or out far, 500 or 600 yards. He can do everything with that gun. The point is this: it's just like camouflage, right? Militaries for the last 100 years have been trying to develop a rifle and an optic that would do everything. They've been trying to develop a camouflage that would do everything. And almost every time they come out with one and they say, this is going to work everywhere, like the ACUs that they came out with, right? It shits all over itself and everybody hates it. What we have to understand and embrace is that
not everybody, Bruce.
I know one person. I know one person that has a porno magazine, and it's nothing but different configurations of that camouflage pattern. He loves it so much. But the reality is that it's just can't do everything well. So instead of you guys, and remember this, if you remember anything, don't try to do everything well. Look at your personal situation, your area of operation. Think about what you may be seeing yourself using that weapon system as, and configure that weapon to best fit that situation. And don't let the internet tell you anything otherwise, because the guy telling you what you're doing is wrong may be in a completely different terrain and situation than what you're in.
Hey, great points. I do want to point out that wasn't me when I pulled up the desert picture. That was Ken. So thanks for confusing me with an Asian. But
so I'm not racist, and I can't tell the
Well, the
difference.
similarity is just
I
unbelievable.
can't tell the difference, guys. I can't tell the difference.
but I was just pointing out, like, look at that picture, right? That the vast openness of that terrain, and then look at this. This is a picture from the Sear Challenge. Like, you see the difference there?
Yeah, guys, if you're in that situation there, that picture from the Sear Challenge, do you need a 6-powered optic in 308? Honestly, it's not going to do you any good. So again, terrain dictates.
Yeah, Bruce, you brought up some good points there, and I'm going to harp on ammo a little bit too. In my personal setup, and take this for what it's worth, I set up all my guns for rot gut 5.56 or 2.23, and I have generally found that a 0 on one round will get you close enough with another, because like one of the things I have to do is I have to get here, I have to zero my rifle, and then once a year I'll pack it all up and send it to Finland. And when I get there, I don't know what brand of ammo I'm getting. I'm just going to get what I can get my hands on. And 0 hasn't been a problem. You know, I just pick a factory, whatever factory brand I have here, I zero it to it, and I go to Finland, and I have yet to have get the same ammo in Finland that I've got back here in the US, and I zeroed my rifle. And I'll say in all the finished brutalities, and my videos are on my channel to back it up, it's not affecting my accuracy. If there's accuracy problems, it's the shooter, it's not the ammo.
What ranges are you shooting at, Les?
150 to 200 meters. So
okay.
It's good enough for that, and that's your rifle is basically a 300-meter thing, so it's gonna work. So I don't worry in my 5.56 rifles to waste a lot of money on super awesome ammo and everything. Just run basic 55 grain. Now 308, different story. And for my 308 DMR, I'm very particular about the ammo I use, and you're particularly right about lot numbers. But I have found that switching lots, you'll get a slight shift, but you don't detect it until you're going past 500.
Yeah, so let me just dime in on this, because I know where Bruce is getting this from. So when we went out to the Nevada desert, I don't remember if it was our first or second time there, that was something Dimitri really harped on. Like, he's like lot numbers, ammo. You got to remember what Dimitri does, right? He designs reticles for these optics, and he goes out there with specific ammunition, and he's got to be 100% precise, right? So he's looking for those, minute off details, because his calculations are what's gonna go into this next reticle that's gonna go into this next primary arms optic. So when he's talking finite, right? When we talk, we're talking fucking minute a man. Right? It's like, as long as my round impacts somewhere in this dude's chest, I'm good. I'm happy all day long. I consider that accurate, right? But he's talking like, no, I want that round hitting this dude right in the fucking sternum, So, he's also shooting at those 5, 6, 700 meter freaking distances with 5.56. Okay, so that's what he's talking about when he's talking like lot numbers and everything else. There is a difference, but is it enough to guys like you and I that are happy with minute a man all day long? No, we don't care. That's accurate for us. Because I remember when we first came out there, the first time we went out, Bruce, we zeroed our weapons in Texas, right? And then I actually took 2 optics. I had an ACOG, and I had a low-powered variable optic Raptor, 1:6 Raptor, I believe it was. And I had it on a QD mount. And then we went out there. I actually shot with my ACOG. And then towards the end of the first day, I took my ACOG off and threw my Raptor on. And Dimitri was like flipping out. He's like, that's not going to work. There's no way that's going to work. And guess what? Boom, 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 ringing steel, right? He's like, I can't believe that held 0. But it's like I'm shooting at a silhouette target at, 5 and 600 freaking meters. It's minute a man. It's not, minute a fucking sternum. So I think that's ultimately what Dimitri's talking about. So is there a difference between lot numbers? Yeah, there probably is. But it's in terms of like infantry combat use, like as long as it's minute a man, like that's accurate to us.
No, absolutely, without a doubt. What other somebody mentioned way down in the chat there a while ago, equipping their whole team with battle rifles, FALs, for example. Sure, why not? Go for it. You know, if you want to carry it and you feel you need that, by all means, go for it.
Yeah, like we were saying before, it got to make sense for the terrain, obviously. I think that and the mission, those are the two most important things. Like Brent, for example, I'm sure there was places you saw out there where you could get some keyhole shots on a certain objective or something of that nature, right? So if the mission dictated, hey, I'm going to set up a far ambush, then maybe that's the time to equip your guys from a civilian perspective with that hardware. But for a regular reconnaissance patrol, that wouldn't make sense. It makes some sense to have, something for closer in fighting potentially.
Yeah, Les, to your point on like the FALs and that stuff. Yeah, with the 7.62 NATO, you're bringing more ass to the fight, and you guys know I love Latina, so I'm all about bringing ass to the fight. But the thing is that it's a heavier weapon system in almost every case. So do think about that, and you can carry less ammunition because of that in almost every case. I was just today watching a video of this guy that was in Ukraine. He jumped his little ass in a foxhole in the middle of the woods. He had an AK-74. And at first, he's like all eager. He's just doing 3-round, 4-round bursts, firing in the direction that he hears fire, whatever. And after about 10 minutes of this, he realizes he needs to slow his roll because he's literally sitting in a foxhole in a combat zone with bullets going both ways. And he's having to jam mags in this foxhole from loose ammunition that's in his pocket. If you're running something like a 7.62 NATO, you've got less of that. And don't forget that a bigger bullet means you have to carry less of it and that you're going to need more resupply for the same amount of ammunition. It may be appropriate in your terrain, in your area. I'm not saying that it's not. It certainly works well in some areas, but there's for every pro, there's a con, and keep in mind both of those.
Yeah, and let me put up the picture of us doing the shooting out there. One second. I say us, but this is actually you and Ken. I won't make the same mistake you made, Bruce. But but anyways, look at guys. You can see, look how far you can see out there, right? You're gonna see an enemy squad way out here, which is probably 500-600 meters, just where the bushes start to get thick again. So you're not going to be closing distance that much, right? You're going to have some significant standoff. So maybe a higher caliber weapon like a 7.62 by 51 would make sense in that type of environment because you're going to have more standoff. You're going to take more well precision, aim shots. But if you're doing some of this close in fighting that they were seeing in these hedgerows in Ukraine, they're dumping mags into each other just like Vietnam. So, those dudes don't want fouls. Those dudes don't want fucking, 7.62 by 51 millimeter battle rifles. They want fucking, magazines upon magazines that they can just spray into the trees because the opposition on the other side is doing the exact same thing to them. So,
that's a good point. And maybe here's something we could do. Terrain dictates, because yes, if I lived in that type of terrain, some of my choices would have been different on the civilian side. Military, you're a little more constrained because you get what you get, and you don't get to go, hey, I'd like one of those and this, that. I mean, I think the only guys who get to walk in and have this armory with a plethora of weapons that they can choose exactly what they want for the situation is like Delta Force. That's probably the only organizations that's got like 10 weapons per trigger puller. Everybody else, it's one rifle, and you got to do everything with your one rifle.
Yeah, except for Americans. I mean, once you get one gun, you're probably going to get more.
Well, yes. So on the civilian side, yes, that's a great point because, if I suddenly decided, wow, there's a fight in the desert I need to go involve myself in, Yeah, my weapon setup would probably be slightly different than the one I gave earlier in this stream for sure. And if you sat there and said, "Oh yeah, Les, I want you to get into this fight where it's completely urban environment," yeah, I'm going to have a very different weapon set.
Was there any optic differences? I feel like some of you, yeah, Les, you went with an EOTech, right?
Yeah, on the military service rifles, I went with the EOTech.
1 power. So
Yep.
what
Plain old red dot for the rifleman and the team leader.
What's your driving factor for that? Like, why do you opt for that? Because I think most guys went with either ACOGs or LPVOs.
I went red dot as well. With
I
irons.
went with EOTech for passive night vision aiming because I'm anticipating more of the fights at night. And like you said, now using a PEC is kind of like using a flashlight when the other side's not equipped. You know, the military is going to be able to sustain it with its batteries. It's not great on batteries compared to literally every other option. But the military can sustain that amount of battery supply to it. So that's not going to be that big an issue. The other reason is that if you need a situation where like you need to magnify it, okay, add a magnifier to it. I know magnifiers aren't currently in military inventory, but it's the ability to be there. But mainly the reason for the EOTech is its night vision compatibility.
Yeah, for me, you know, how I see it is a lot of the terrain that I see myself in is 50 to 100 meter fights. Sometimes it's a little bit further, but for those very rare cases, that's what the iron sights are for.
You know, you brought up the terrain out there in California where you and I were at, Brent. And there was a lot of places where you couldn't see 10 or 15 feet past into the brush. And having an EOTech with a 3 times magnifier that you can flip in and out, because there were some areas that opened up there and you could see 300, 400, 500 meters. Something like that. I think those EOTechs are just a really good all around, because they can be configured either way for close in or a little bit further out.
So that's why I opt for ACOGs, right? With an RMR. I'm throwing that caveat on there. Because it's like, you know, when you're in those really thick environments, that RMR is for CQB. It's for close in combat, right? And it's the perfect height for passive aiming. If you've ever shot passively with MVGs, with an RMR on top of an ACOG, or, you know, even if you have an RMR on top of an LPVO, you will notice that it is like the perfect height for doing that. It is fantastic. And then when you have those medium to moving out to long range engagements, you know, the ACOG is perfect for that. It's the happy medium magnification, right? It's not 8 power for the super long shots. But here's the thing, guys. I have shot out to 800 yards away with an ACOG and have hit. I'm not saying I hit every time, but I have hit, and the rounds hit, you know, that I missed were very close. So it's like, I can reach out, I can see the target. And I was even able to, you know, range estimate with my reticle on that, you know, that hash mark on that 800 yard line with that silhouette. So it's like, you know, I think it's a good combat optic, that combination, right? So the ACOG in and of itself, by itself, I'm not that big of a fan of it. But when you combined it with that RMR, it's even though it's a dated optic, it's been around for a while, it's still, in my opinion, a fucking body slayer. And that's why it's literally on my primary go-to rifle. I got multiple rifles. I got rifles with LPVOs on them. But if fucking Chinese paratroopers start falling out of the sky, I'm grabbing that fucking ACOG RMR on that Daniel Defense quad rail, fucking vintage, and love it. And going to town, baby. Slaying.
Right. So I don't personally have a lot of experience with RMR. That's why I didn't really consider that. So I have a couple questions. What battery life, right? So I know my old aim points, they're basically every presidential cycle I change the freaking batteries on those things. I don't know what's the status on the batteries for the RMR.
So I
Well,
run.
There's a version that uses fiber optic where there is no battery.
Don't get that one. Honestly don't get that one.
I love
hate
that one. So,
Do you? Okay,
Yeah.
so here's my problem with that one. And the reason I bought it is because that's the one they threw on all like the ACOGs that were on saws. They would throw those on there. And they worked great out in Afghanistan where there's fucking sun everywhere, right? But I had that, I threw it on my ACOG and I multiple times going into houses, kicking on my weapon mounted light in rooms and stuff. It just drowned out that light. That fiber optic dot was just not doing it for me. I ended up going with the I can't remember what the model is, but the one that takes the CR123 or you know what I'm talking about, the circular
battery 3022.
Yeah. Dude, that thing has been in there because I can turn it off, right? I don't have it running all the time. That thing has been running for like 3 years and I haven't had to replace it yet. So, but again, I'm turning it off when it's in my safe. So
Okay. And then my other question with it is, what about changing that battery? Do you gotta freaking unscrew it from it, or is it?
So that's why some of the Hollow Suns are nice, right? Because you don't have to do that. You can literally change the battery without having to remove it. RMR, unfortunately, you have to take it off and swap it out. But if I had to do that every freaking 3-4 years at this rate, the way I've been going, it's not. Preferably I wouldn't want to do that, but if I'm going to do it every 3-4 years, can I really complain about that? So,
Okay. And then my last question is durability. I know my aim points can freaking get knocked and they'll be fine. What about the RMR?
It's been fantastic for me, man. So you and I will talk offline.
They've held up for me. I have not encountered the problems that people claim, but take into context, people who don't like RMRs and say they don't hold up are super high-end competition shooters. And they're at that high level. I think it doesn't even apply to combat or self-defense situations.
Yeah.
Something to think about, guys, is this shake awake technology that's available in some of the optics. I think it's going to become available in most of them, where they use a battery, but they essentially, if the optic hasn't moved for a certain period of time, it's a few minutes, it goes to sleep. So it's not draining any battery. And the moment that you move that optic, it comes back on and it starts using the battery again. And I have this on my shotgun that I use for home defense. It sits against my gear cross in the bedroom and it's just asleep right now. It's not burning any battery time at all. But the moment that I pick it up and I bring it up to my eyes, boom, it's on. It's illuminating. And I've got that dialed in to where it's set up for a low light situation. I can see that circle horseshoe that it's got, and it's ready to go to work. That's kind of the best of both worlds, because how do you have something that's battery powered for nighttime or low light, but you're not always draining a battery? And there's different approaches. So with like Holosun and Primary Arms and maybe some others, they went with this shake awake technology. And with guys like Aimpoint, they basically said, look, you've got like a 50,000 hour runtime on your battery. So if you're not so lazy that you get off your ass and you change your battery once a year, it's never going to go out on you. Two different approaches, two different ways of solving the same issue. And for most of us, really for all of us, imagine if you were going into combat tomorrow, right? Ukrainian situation. If you've got an extra battery in your kit somewhere, you're going to be golden on an aim point, because that's a year of combat before you're going to have to swap it out. The same is true for like the Primary Arms or Holosun approach with the shake awake technology. That battery may not be as efficient, but it's not going to be being used when that weapon's not being moved. Now, if you've got that shake awake technology in the trunk of your car, oh yeah, that's shake awake I'm talking about right there. If she was Latina, guys, I'd have to log off, but she's not. But if you've got that shake awake technology and it's rolling around in the trunk of your car every day, okay, that might be a problem, because when that car starts moving, it's going to start burning that battery on the shake awake technology. That's something absolutely to think about. One other point I wanted to bring up that you guys mentioned a little while ago was one guy says, like, what about a 5X? We haven't directly talked about this. But if you've got something with so much magnification that's fixed, like I've got a 50 caliber BMG. We played with this on Brent's channel. It's got a fixed 10x. That's not a CQB weapon, obviously. You guys understand that, right? If you've got a 5x, how does that 5x look if you're using it in a CQB situation? Now, Brent's solution is put an RMR on top or have a set of fixed irons on top like some of the ACOGs do. They're solving a problem. If you just buy a 5X and you think you're going to use it to defend your home, that might actually be a problem. You might want to think about that. For me personally, 3X is about the maximum amount of magnification I can bring up to my eyesight at close range using both eyes open and still be able to put a dot or a chevron on the target and get good hits. And this is where ACOG becomes questionable. Many ACOGs are 4X, so they're just a little bit too powerful for that. They kind of still work, but they're not ideal, and that's why you see RMR mounts on top of ACOGs or iron sight mounts on top of ACOGs, because that 4X or that 6X ACOG is a little bit too much magnification for engaging something up close. So if you're thinking about going with a higher magnification, or this is the case where like your low powered variable optic comes into point, where you've got a 1 to 4 or 1 to 6. Great. I've got 6X if I'm engaging targets at 500 meters, which is fantastic. But if all of a sudden I'm walking into a town or a suburban environment where I'm doing more CQB city fighting, or if I'm in a wooded area where I'm engaging targets within 30 yards, boom, I'll bump that right back down to 1X. And now I can engage those targets up close using both eyes open. These are just things to think about, guys. And there's a reason that there's about 4,000 different optics on the market right now, is because there's not a perfect solution for any of them. Because if there was, we would just have one freaking optic and everybody would buy it.
I'm just going to throw in my personal experience, and I don't want to come off as sounding like negative towards low power variable optics, because I do like them. I have several of them. I have them mounted on my rifles. They are good, but here's the thing though. The concept that I'm going to sit there and doing this in combat, right? Going back and forth, switching between powers. It just has not been my experience in combat. My experience in combat, the most intensive combat I've ever seen was in the Najaf Cemetery. And I literally was going into a CQB situation, right? And tombstones are like going over my head at points where I couldn't even see out of the cemetery because there's tombstones everywhere, to the point where I even mounted a bayonet. That's how close quarters it was. Had trouble seeing the Marines to my right and left as we pushed in there online. And then we push deeper into the cemetery and we get to the point where, oh crap, the cemetery is still there, right? I still have that CQB threat. But guess what? I can now see out into the city also buildings that are 4, 5, 6, 7, 800 meters away. Okay. Well, I'm not going to be sitting there and doing this back and forth for addressing threats that are up close and threats that are way out, running between buildings 500, 600 meters, 700 meters out. There's just no time for that. When I saw enemies at 700 meters, 600 meters, 500 meters, they were running between buildings, split seconds. Okay. So that's why I opt for that. If I have a low power variable optic, I have it maxed out, man. If that's a 6 power, low power variable optic, it's at 6 power. If I have an 8 power, it's probably going to be at 8 power. And I want to throw that RMR. I just did a video recently where I got this new mount from Primary Arms where you just replace the top mount, and it enables you to mount a little, hollow sun or RMR on there. Oh my God, it's fucking awesome, guys. I love that. If I could go into the cemetery with that, that would be fantastic, but I'd still choose an ACOG with RMR combo over that. So that's where my experience comes from. In terms of, why I pick the optics I do. So, because I think Najaf Cemetery, and man, that 1 power RMR would have been perfect for those close-in fights. And those targets I saw at distance, that ACOG, that 4X would have been just fine. it would have been nice to have 8 power engaging them, but guess what? For the medium, more close 300 meter, maybe 200 meter targets, that ACOG would have been money, whereas 8 power probably would have been too much.
And why do you like the mount above your mount as opposed to like a homie sight, like a 45 degree?
Well, because transitioning shoulders, if you do that could be a thing, right? I'm not opposed to the 45. It's natural, right? Because you don't even have to like break your point of aim. And I do have one of my weapons set up like that right now. But if you did had to transition to your opposite shoulder for whatever reason, maybe you have an injury, whatever the case may be, that's a benefit, right? Because you can't really contort your body. But the number one reason is just the height for NVGs. Again, when it's mounted on the top right there, you're shooting and your rifle is like down here and your NVG's up here. You're not having to do this with your 14 to try to get behind it. It's perfect. It's at the right height. So that's why I prefer having it on the top.
So your optic is at a standard, like what is it, 1.5 inches, as opposed to like when I run red dots, I run them with a lower 1/3. So they're already up a little higher. So, since your optic is a little lower and then you have the mount a little higher, then, it's not so bad, so to speak.
Yeah. And I know dudes like the guy that we had up earlier that Bruce thought was me. He loves red dots with the higher risers for the purposes of MVG and everything else, just CQB and everything. So like all his stuff is like really high. He runs those like high Unity mounts. I can't remember the exact specifications, but generally speaking, when those dudes run those higher mounts, it's MVGs are what they're thinking. At least that's been my experience. Maybe
that's been mine as well. I mean, you shoot more squared up, more upright position, anyways, with NVG. So yeah, that's why it makes sense to have it higher up.
What else we got? Jared, you've been quiet. What you got, man?
No, I'm just reading comments here. A little bit of a delay because I'm watching them on the TV behind the phone. But no, I think just everybody puts so much into optics and everything, and just do what works for your area. Just do what's going to work for your home, where you work, where you live, where you play, and it's going to vary so much. Right around my house, I'm lucky to get 100 yards. From here to back to where my range is, from the house to the range is maybe 120 yards or so. I'm not going to shoot around here any further than that. If I get away from the house, it's a big farming community here. There's places where you can have 1,000-yard shot, but typically everything's going to be less than 500 yards around here. So just keep it simple. Don't overthink it. And all these people, they go out and they spend thousands of dollars on optics and they're putting them on rifles that cost $500, thinking it's going to make them a better shooter, and it doesn't.
Yeah, it is weird that we are in an age now that the rifle is way cheaper than the optic. I mean, I guess thinking back historically, that always was, but rifles, historically were pretty expensive in their own right. But now, with a lot of these, big companies like PSA has really helped drive the price down to where optics is the more expensive part of the rifle.
Mm-hmm.
For a long time, people have said things like, if you buy a Remington 700 and it costs you $800, plan on spending twice that on the optic. There's a little bit of truth to that. If you want to trick out a rifle with a really nice optic, if you buy a Scar 17 and you sink $3,500 in it, and you go, well, I'm going to put an L-can on it. Yeah, you're going to spend some money, right? And a lot of people are like, I'm not the poor's. I won't put a $300 primary arms optic on a $3,500 Scar 17. Listen, if you've got the money, the world is your oyster, right? You don't put cheap tires on a Ferrari. But if that, listen, and I get that, that's fine. But it was one guy, I'm going to pull it up right here. Time Force 80 made a comment who said something like, he's like the Poors, right? He's like, I just run irons because that's all I got. Brother, I got you. There's nothing wrong with that. And if you watch this stream, you might make the mistake, which we are not trying to convey, but we might make you think that you need an expensive or nice optic on your weapon or you're not in the game. That is not the case at all, and none of us are saying that. If you're running irons and you've got a mindset to kill, you're going to be ahead of the guy that's running the most expensive optic out there, but hesitates for 2 seconds before pulling the trigger.
Yeah, I want to mention this real quick. I think it was the second time Bruce and I went out to Vegas. Bruce brought his what did you used to run?
Was that the Scar or was that the Beretta?
It was a Scar. Your Scar 16. He ran a Scar 16 with a freaking primary arms, 3-power, etched reticle, fixed optic. Right?
I caught shit for that. It was a $250 optic on a $2,000 plus weapon.
Yeah. He was ringing steel. I had my Daniel Defense with ACOG fixed 4, and Bruce was shooting every bit as good as me, if not better at times. He was killing it. He was murdering it with that $350 optic on that rifle. So.
No, it's true, man. I got a what is it? Redfield Rifleman or Accu Reticule, something like that. Redfield scope. It's made by Leopold. It's like a Rifleman line, $170 scope. That thing's awesome. That thing, that thing works great for me. 2x7, 7 power is good enough. 2 powers, decent. That's what was my primary optic for a while before LPV. What is it? The low, 1 to 8s came out. 2x7 was the way to go back then. And that's still a good optic today.
Hey, Jacob Wolf, thanks for that. And just to piggyback on that, we've said this before. Like, if you're in a poorhouse and all you can afford is like a $500 Palmetto State Armory AR-15, that's perfect. Get that, and then get your $200-$300 PA red dot or prism optic, whatever it is you can afford, and then go train with it. Invest your money into training, and then prove when you can. But absolutely, like, you don't need $1,000 Daniel Defense rifle to get into the game, right? For self defense. So, what was the rifle that the one kid that defended himself in Kenosha had? I'm sure that wasn't no high dollar AR-15.
I think it was like a Smith & Wesson M&P Sport or something like that.
Yeah.
With the cheapo optic. With the cheapo optic.
So Rittenhouse took out 2-3 assailants, with a cheap $500 rifle. He defended himself successfully. Minimal training. So
I don't even think he used his optic on it whenever he shot.
Probably not. He's probably point shooting.
I think it was just point and shoot.
Yeah.
I tell you what, though, he had a amazing sense of mind about him. He kept his wits and composure under extreme pressure. I mean, if this guy didn't have training, they say you never rise to the occasion. Well, buddy, he rose to the occasion. I'll say that.
Even his demeanor afterwards was pretty stellar. Right after, when he was trying to turn himself into the police or whatever.
Yeah, he's probably a case after the shooting started. Okay, he might not have made the very best decisions before so, but after the shooting started, he's probably a textbook case of how to handle yourself with bad guys that are, 1, posing a threat, and 2, handling law enforcement. He goes in with his hands in the air. He goes to turn himself in, and they're like, "Go home, kid. We don't have time for you." So, but good for him, and that's a case worth looking at for a guy that I think you're right. he had a M&P Sport, which is an inexpensive AR-15, a $500 AR-15, and a piece of junk. For all you guys in chat, you would laugh at him, you would point at him and snub your nose at him for having a sight mark optic on it. But maybe this sort of goes to the point. When someone's on top of you, does an optic even matter? Not so much. It's mindset.
No, good point. The equipment that you have is better than the equipment that you don't have, you know. And I've gone to some major competitions and seen guys running TRS 25s. You know, there's the most low budget of low budget optics. And I've even run them in the past too, because they're great placeholders till you figure out what you want to put on that rifle. Are they the strongest things in the world? No, we've proven that at One Shepherd. We've destroyed those things in no time flat. But, you know, they're good enough. They're good placeholders. And if all you got is $100 for an optic, that's going to get you through.
Yeah, and guys, I think it's important to point out, I know a lot of you guys are talking about, you know, sort of, you notice a thread that a lot of us are sort of bringing up primary arms. And maybe I should clarify why. Look, if you want an LCAN, go buy 2. If you want an ACOG, go buy 3. If you've got the money for it, by all means, no one is knocking you for that at all. Buy whatever you want. But if you're on an entry level budget, you got 2 screaming kids in the background, you're telling to be quiet, your dog's barking, you're living the real American life, and your freaking wife is watching your bank account like crazy. I've been there. I know what that's like. You're hoarding away a little money here and there to try to buy ammunition and training, and you think that you want an optic for the money. Primary Arms offers a lot. It's a very durable optic. It's relatively inexpensive. And with that ACSS reticle, which is, in my opinion, the greatest thing since sliced bread, that ACSS reticle will allow you to range at distance without having to do any type of math or
Okay. ATF
I'm not
got bruised.
Got him. I guess what he was trying to say is, I know where he's going with this. So when we went out to Nevada, we put steel out at unknown distances, and we jumped in Dimitri's truck and we drove back, and all that steel had 18-inch cross section on the silhouette. So it's the average adult male's shoulder to shoulder distance or width. And, jumping out of that truck and then acquiring those silhouette targets and then using the ACSS to, gauge the distance of those targets, it was just phenomenal. No math involved, just trying to line up, freaking the hash marks and finding the appropriate one and then going to town. Unknown distance and getting, in some cases, first round hits. All right. And if you didn't hit, you were damn close and you just fired till you did. And you're hitting steel within, I don't know, 3 to 5 rounds. That's valuable stuff. So there's clearly a benefit to that, because all kinds of companies, it used to be just, ACSS reticle came out and like that was, other than the standard ACOG reticle that would just had the, the bullet drop compensation with the, the auto ranging and the hash marks. But after the ACSS come, look how many companies have their own version, of essentially a ripped off ACSS, right? They came up with something that's very similar, but they, twisted and contorted it so that it's not the exact same. Look how many reticles are out there now that do that. So very important.
Yeah, but with that ACSS, I mean, that's kind of baked into what caliber you're shooting and what barrel length, right?
Yeah, well, so when you first get that optic, so first off, when you buy an optic, a lot of them are calibrated, if I can remember correctly, I think it's like 5.56, 5.45 by 39, and then 7.62 by 51. We're like compatible, right? So you look in your book and it tells you like, hey, if you're running 5.56 using 55 grain ammunition, like this is where you zero your rifle. You know, and if you're running 308, this is where you zero your rifle. Like this is, you hold 1 inch high or something like that. So you can calibrate to that, calibrate your reticle to that specific caliber. But then there's other calibers that are significantly different. For instance, like 7.62 by 39 and 300 blackout went together. So a lot of their models were like that. So.
But yeah, I mean, the other thing I think you brought up a good point is also range estimation. I mean, this is something that, you know, you just got to learn it by doing. It's like, if you want to be able to get basketballs in the hoop, you got to throw some free throws, you know? Yeah, I think that's range estimation right there. One of the tricks I kind of learned to get good at it is I would go and guess a distance, and then I had a laser rangefinder, and I just laser it. So I calibrated myself and my guesses to the laser rangefinder. So there's a couple ways to do this without necessarily any kind of like instruction. I know some guys say, hey, a bucket size this big and whatever, you know, but to me, that seemed like the way for me to do it, which is just guess and check myself, guess, check myself, guess, check myself.
China got him.
Yay, Bruce!
Yeah, I just looked outside. There's a giant freaking balloon over my house. I don't know if that has anything to do with this or not, but you guys understand the struggles we face.
All right, guys, we're at the 1 hour 46-minute mark. So I know we just got Bruce back, but I think it's probably time we start wrapping it up, because we're probably going to hit the 2 hour mark here very shortly. And I want to make sure we get our final thoughts in. Before we go around the horn, is there any loose hanging chads that we need to address? Tie up? Bruce, you were in a thought before you got kicked off by the Chi-Coms. What'd you have?
Well, I'm a lot like Karl Rove. Y'all ever watch Karl Rove, the fat guy that used to be like in charge of bushes? But he walks around with this whiteboard, right? And I've got my notepad, and you guys can't see this. Maybe you can. But right here I've got U.S. greatness. U.S. greatness. Okay. So let's talk about U.S. greatness. This is going to be my final thought, U.S. greatness. Afford good optics and weapons cheap. You guys don't understand how fortunate we are in this country to be having this discussion. Okay. We can go out and we can spend $1,000 and we can get a really nice AR. And for another couple $100, we can put a really nice optic on top of it. And we can sit here and have arguments about what optic is the best and which one is better than the other and what platform is the best and what caliber is the best. This is because we live in a great country where we can get all of this stuff. There are people in some countries simply wishing that they could get a rifle, period. Much less arguing about what type of optics that they have back and forth. So greatness. The fact that we're having this discussion, the fact that we've got optics and rifles for guys that have $1,200 to spend, or we've got optics and rifles for guys that have $5,000 to spend. We can accommodate either way, even less than that. You could be like the Kenosha Kid. You could go out and spend $550 on an M&P Sport. You can throw a primary arms 1X on top of it. You're in this thing for about $800. And you know what? If your mindset is there, you're going to run just like everybody. You're going to run as good as anybody else. America, FEL, right? Brandon asked that I mentioned this shake awake technology once more because, oh girl, it's the hairstyle, man. It's not even the shake awake. It's her hairstyle. Babe, we're gonna get your hair done tomorrow. All right, you're gonna be blonde before you know. I know. I'm sorry, guys. I got sidetracked there, but let me talk about this shake awake technology now that I'm all excited about it. I'm excited to bring it to you. I don't know if I mentioned it again, but guys, this is the greatest thing ever. Okay, battery sleeps. till you pick up the weapon. Then the weapon's a go. And when you put the weapon down, it goes to sleep again. Battery lasts a really long time. Change your battery every year. But if you don't remember, you're probably going to be okay. Shake Awake Technology. You guys look it up if you don't have it. Holosun offers it. Primary Arms offers it, and maybe there may be some other manufacturers that offer it as well. I expect to see more and more offering it in the future, because for those of us who are not carrying a rifle every day, but we've got it in the safe or in the closet or by the bed, and we're only going to pick it up when something goes bump in the night or there's a reason that we need to. The Shake Awake Technology is phenomenal stuff. Okay, I've said my piece.
All right, so I'm going to go around the horn and final thoughts on the topics tonight, and also I want you guys to address your respective YouTube channels, what's coming down the pipe, any big projects, anything like that, and then we'll say our piece and call it quits. So kicking it over to Les, you got the con.
All right. So great topic tonight. A lot of good discussion here. Interesting thing I found is that while we were all different things of how we could fill the role on the civilian side, we all pretty much agreed that the ARRPK was the answer for the automatic rifleman's role. It was some great agreement there. How much money you spend on your civilian setup, that's up to you. But put some thought into it. Think about what you're going to do. Think about the terrain you're in, and think about what you need to accomplish with these weapons in that terrain, and then go from there. And there's nothing wrong if you've got a low budget and you just don't have the funds to devote toward it. For $1,000, you can get yourself a PSA AR, which is good and reliable. Get yourself several different brands of polymer striker fired pistols that are good and reliable, and some type of optic, and you haven't spent $1,000. It is possible. And the great thing about that is when life gets better for you and you have more funds to devote for it, and you can get that Daniel Defense with ACOG and pack and everything else, well, now you got a backup rifle or loaner rifle. As far as what's coming on my channel, I've done a lot of gear tests lately. I've been editing a lot of videos. So coming up here in future weeks, got a lot of gear testing coming out. I hope you all enjoy it.
All right. So no matter what you get, just train with it. I don't care if it's $100 optic or a $10,000 optic. You need to be able to train. If you don't train, it doesn't do you any good. If all you can afford, if you can't even afford an optic and all you have is the iron sights, train with that. Get good with that. Get proficient with it. And then just work your way up. Do it in stages. But the bottom line is put your money into the training first and get proficient with the less with less. As far as my YouTube channel goes, I just got a computer today. I just took it out of the box tonight, right before I jumped on here. So hopefully here in the next couple weeks and in the following months, I will have some better content coming in on my YouTube channel. I do have a class scheduled for March 18th here in Virginia. So if anybody is on here that's close to the Central Virginia area, go to my YouTube channel. All the information is there. My contact information is on the video posted in the description. So it's 2 Alpha Solutions.
Hey, Jared, I see you got a buddy next to you on the couch. You want to introduce him?
That is my Shepherd Yoda, chewing on his tail. There he is. He goes everywhere with me. He 24/7. He is with me by my side.
Outstanding.
So yeah, I appreciate y'all's feedback, and I think that's 100%. My uppers are good to go. As far as, but this is one thing I want to tell you guys. Just like the food pyramid they just put out is all whacked up, inverted. Your list of priorities needs to be this. Third most important is your equipment. Second most important is your training. Most important is your friends, your social group, right? You pursue all 3, you get all 3. But I would focus more on the network, the training, over the equipment. One thing about my channel here. So I got AR-15 3D printable magazines is something I'm working on. Just trying to bring it up to USGI standards.
You mean paperweights, right?
What? This isn't a firearm. This is just an accessory, right?
I know. YouTube censors.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah.
Oh,
See,
look at him. He's already starting to
Plastic.
You're jamming the big gun. Come on, fight through it, Mike.
you use the word 3D printer and magazines in the same sentence.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, no. So I've been working on this for the past couple weeks now. I'm getting close to release this, but I got a little bit of ways to go. I'm still working through a couple things, but I'm about there. So look for this coming down the pipe.
Awesome, brother. Bruce is nope, here he comes.
I'm here because Klein just touched on something that's important to me that I just got involved in. 3D printable AR-15 paperweights, YouTube. Now that's a fantastic idea. I just purchased these are Russian AK-74 plum paperweights, but they have 3D printed 5.56 followers, which allow me to run 5.56 rounds reliably in a 7.62 by, a 5.45 by 39 AK-74 paperweight. So you're onto something there, Klein, and that you're doing God's work. That's good work, bringing that information to people so they can put that together in the comfort of their home using a 3D printer. Everybody needs more paperweights, so that's a good thing. Look, all I've got, Carl Rove, I brought my notepad back out real quick for you guys. When it comes to you guys purchasing optics or firearms, one, if you're in the federal military, they're going to give you what they want you to have. That's just the way that it is. But if you're like me and you're not, or you find yourself in a situation where you're having to provide for yourself, think about a few things. One, what terrain are you realistically operating in? What will you be using this for? Okay, what are you using it for? Realistically, all right, are you forming up with a battalion of troops that's going to go attack something, or are you defending your home and family? Be realistic about it. Stay in your budget, all right? If you've got a BMW and a Lexus in the garage, okay, you've got a 3-story McMansion, and you've got a beach house, all right, and you want that SCAR 17 and you want that L-can on top, you go get that SCAR 17 and you get that L-can, and you get one in black and you get one in tan because you got that kind of money. But if you're in a trailer house and you've got a 1994 Corvette parked out front, all right, and your wife is crying because she needs diapers for the baby, all right, you got to scale your budget down a little bit and be realistic. So you may be looking at something like an M&P Sport for $500 and a primary arms or Holosun optic. And that's okay. We need all of you, regardless of what your financial situation is. A financial situation does not make a better soldier or a better combatant. Okay, it's what you've got right here. So you do what works for you, but be realistic and stay in budget. And someone asked, I don't know what, are you new? You don't know what my channel is? Bruce at Camp Armament. Come on, guys. Get on board, man. Get on board.
Yep. Maybe in a month or two, when he hits a year since his last video upload, he'll put out an update on it. So, I bust his balls all the time, guys. So if you don't know, there's a video Bruce has been working on for about 5 years now. And one of these days it's going to air. And so you're going to see like a 5 years younger me in that video because I did a cameo in it. All right. So I've got a Bruce Carl Rove thing too, but I'm not going to show it because I'm sure there's multiple misspelled words on here because I am an infantryman by trade and not an English professor. so I thought we had a great discussion tonight, guys. You know, there was definitely a difference in some aspects between like what we thought the military squad member should have and what the civilian squad member should have. But there's, the common trend is like it's parallel, right? It's very similar. It's very similar in that military makeup and that civilian armed prepared citizen makeup, right? Because as the civilian armed prepared citizen, you kind of have to, stay in the middle of your left and right lateral limits in terms of the law. And unfortunately, that depends on which state you live in too. But for the most part, the recommendations we had for your civilian armed prepared citizen were very similar. And I think you could pluck any one of those recommendations from the civilian aspect and plug it into the military aspect, and they would perform at the very same level, or at least very close to the same level of performance as those weapon systems that we outlined in the military side of the house. So that's good. And that speaks a lot of this country, and that we have the capability currently to own those types of weapon systems, optics, and all of the other accoutrements that go along with war fighting material. So that's good. That's kind of my roundup on the weapons loadout for the billets. What do I got coming down the pipe for the channel? So first off, let me pivot away from my channel and talk about another channel. Somebody that's actually in the chat, or at least he was earlier, is Grunt Proof, guys. The SEER challenge is going on. Both Jared and I are both in that. Okay, it's a awesome series, and man, I cannot believe that more people haven't tuned into that. So it's blowing my mind, and it's nuts. If you guys haven't seen that, or if you don't know what I'm talking about, go over to Grunt Proof's channel and check out the SEER challenge. It's on episode 4, just finished yesterday, and I think there's 10 total episodes, but it's just a phenomenal series, guys. I got hooked after I watched season 1, and I got hooked so much that I wanted to participate in season 2. So Jared and I are the contestants in season 2, and it's going on right now. Airs every Sunday at 1500, and there's always a after party following the episode where we do a live stream, just kind of talking about what happened in that episode. So it's just fantastic. So pivoting back to my channel, the Brent0331 YouTube channel, what do I got coming down the pipe? Well, I've got episode or part 2 of Winter Forge. The Winter Leaders course is going to air tomorrow. I will post that probably in the morning, so you guys can watch that. And then I will work on part 3, which will be the field training exercise, the final culminating event of Winter Forge, which unbelievable experience, guys. And Mike Klein was there with me during that, and it was just awesome. Freaking terrible weather, which is exactly what you want for Winter Forge, right? Snow, just miserable conditions, and it was just great. That's what we went up there to train in, and that's what we got. So that FTX video will be epic, and will probably come down a pipe in the next couple weeks. I also just got done filming today a couple Infantryman's Guide videos, real short ones. I'm not going to reveal the topics yet, but real short. I'll be pushing those ones out, kind of similar to, I did an Infantryman's Guide over Terrain Model Kit, similar in that aspect. It's, short, sweet Infantryman's Guide episode. So those will come out. I don't anticipate those taking too much of my time to work on and editing. So those should be rolling out soon. So other than that, guys, your weekly streams every Monday, or at least we try to. Sometimes we have to wave off, but that's all I got, fellas. I do want to address something, and I'll open this up to the panel. I saw several mentions of bayonets, and I am all fucking for bayonets. And as a
absolutely,
as a Marine who's mounted a bayonet in combat, unfortunately, I didn't get to drive 6 inches of cold hard steel in the chest of an Al Qaeda insurgent in the Najaf cemetery. But as a Marine mounting that bayonet, I'll tell you what, it gave me that warm and fuzzy, because I had no idea where the enemy was going to pop out of, and I fully expected them to come around the corner any second. And just having a freaking Marine Corps OKC-3 bayonet attached to my M16A4 service rifle in that Najaf cemetery just gave me that extra warm and fuzzy. So I am all for freaking bayonets, out freaking standing, slay fucking bodies. So Anybody else got anything to add to bayonets?
Yeah, absolutely. People don't die instantly. So you may have to fight them to their grave, trying to prevent them from dragging you to theirs, to your own.
Well said, Mike. Now, I believe in the spirit of the bayonet. I think if you're trained how to use it properly and you just have the fortitude and the fire in your belly to charge forward, you'll usually find the other guy does not want to be where the crazy man with the cold steel on the end of his rifle wants to be. You suddenly find that you've got other places to go.
There's a psychological effect of bayonets too, and we see this throughout wars and in other countries. We saw this in Vietnam, where you've got a guy with an M16 that you know is loaded, but people are giving him smack when he's trying to tell him what to do. You put a bayonet on the end of that and you prod Mama San along, she gets to moving. There's something about that cold, hard steel that has a psychological effect that a rifle loaded for whatever reason doesn't always have. So absolutely look at that stone cold killer. That's Ken. And man, does he look awesome with that bayonet on his rifle.
You're killing it tonight, man. All right, guys. Good chat. Has anybody got any save rounds? No? All right, fellas. Well, again, this has been a good one. And signing off for our weekly stream. Thanks for tuning in, fellas. See you on the next one.